Hi,
Hi,
Cheryl. How are you
everyone.
doing?
Good. How are you today, Adelie?
I'm good. I'm excited about our topic today. I'm
Part
excited that we're
3.
going to talk about AI and we're going to
Yes,
talk
the
about how we can
secret
use it in our
sauce.
multi-age classroom. That's right, our secret sauce. That's what we've called it. We're excited. And we want to certainly um remind each other and our friends that Jess has worked on this with us and is here with us in spirit today. You will have seen this drone footage of Alberta that we have been gifted. Cheryl and I have used this in several of our sessions. And in particular today, when I think about our topic is going to be the secret sauce and AI, more than ever do I feel that we need to be grounded to nature and we need to be grounded to our outside. And we need to spend time thinking about how are we connecting to the land that we are stewards of. I appreciate being a settler here. I know that Cheryl and I are both coming to you from Treaty 7. You may be coming from different treaty areas. And as we learn to more about Treaty 7 from our beautiful neighbors, from the Piikani and Kainai elders that spend time with us, and other Blackfoot from Sutina, um, when we've had the privilege of sitting with folks from Chiniki, from Bearspaw, from the Good Stony Fir Nations folks, we have learned a lot about our nature. We've learned a lot how Indigenous folks came and gathered in the river, in particular here in Treaty 7, because we're tucked into the valleys. This was the place to gather in winter and to be together in communion and to be safe from the prevailing winds and snow and all kinds of things that happened during winter time. And as we think about AI and we think about the time that we're going through, it can feel a little bit like we need to shelter and protect ourselves and learn and take time to contemplate before we move forward into the game and into the hunting and other seasons of our life. And so we're grateful today to have this footage as a way of anchoring our conversation and moving forward. And again, this is the dynamic trio that has come to you, and we are sorry Jess can't be with us today, but she is certainly here with us in spirit, and we appreciate the work that she put into helping us design our resource guides and of course the slide deck that we're talking with you about today. Guess what, Cheryl?
AI is a hot topic. It certainly is. It certainly is. And I don't know about you, but as a teacher, I just feel like it's everywhere. It's in my feeds, it's coming up on social media, it's in the news. It's like, how are we doing this? And what's our responsibility? How do we think about academic integrity? And wait, can we use this to help us reduce our workload? What about critical thinking? I just feel like there's so many questions popping into mind about what this is. And did you hear about the hallucinations of AI?
I know it's one thing after another. Use it, don't use it only if. And so we're hoping today we cut through some of that mess, some of that noise. We felt it was really important to address during this series as we're looking at supporting a continuum of learners and in a continuum of learning outcomes and putting that together. We know that AI has a place, and we've had an opportunity to work and to think about it. And so we want to share some of our thoughts. We're not experts. We don't know everything there is to know about AI. I feel like I know this much about it. But I do want to share some of my thoughts, and Cheryl's and Jess's, and also our experiences with you. And hopefully that helps you on your journey to consider where IA fits in your practice. We found this a hilarious little graphic from Teachers with a Sense of Humor. Some of you may also follow that group. And essentially what it's showing here is a pie graph of what do we actually do in a teaching day. And some of it's comical, some of it will feel more true than we'd like to admit. But really, this little orange piece here, actually teaching the content, is where most of us lie awake at night thinking about, how do I bring this learning outcome forward? How is Susie going to get this concept understood? Where is this going to come from? And so as we really think about AI, Cheryl and I really are committed to thinking about how could it increase our time actually working with the concept and bringing conceptual understanding forward with our students. And is there a place for AI in some of the rest of this? Some of it we're going to cover today and some we're not, but we do think that there's a place. And the main questions that we're grappling with today are, what part of our role do we need to fully own as teachers? And what part of our role can we ask an assistant to work on with us? Cheryl, I know you've got some thoughts on this. What are you thinking? What do you think an educator needs to own, and what are some places that you think, maybe an assistant wouldn't be a bad idea?
Yeah, I think these questions are really important. As educators who have the relationships that we talked so much about in session 2 when we were thinking about the culture, AI doesn't have a relationship with our students, and we are getting to know who they are as individuals, as humans, but as learners as well. And we're picking up on the nuances of how they're feeling that day and what they're able to manage in terms of their mental health and their academic achievement so far and where we know that they can go. And so I really think that the art and the science of teaching, the pedagogical practices that we have learned and tried and rely upon, that's the part that we need to own. We really need to know who our students are. We need to understand our curriculum deeply and continue to learn it. I know that there's a lot of new curriculum right now and we're all learning it. So we'll get there over time, but to have that sort of that competency and that confidence in our curriculum. But that's the part that we really need to develop over time. And the pedagogy is the most important part that we know. It's about students, the relationship, and designing the learning based on the assessment evidence that we are gathering. And so that's the part I think we need to own. Um, Assistance, yeah, I think we could also use some help in certain areas. Do you want to talk further about that?
Yeah, I just want to just sit in them. I just so appreciate your answer. I think while you were talking, I even felt my shoulders going down a little bit. And I hope that folks, as you're listening, your shoulders went down as Cheryl was talking. Artificial intelligence can't replace that human connection, that human relationship that Cheryl's talked about, but it can help us be better at moving some of that work forward and give us some time to build those relationships and not be so bogged down with creating some of the resources in the background. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. When we look at AI, we I learned a bunch of things from IBM and a few other companies very early on who started to differentiate what artificial intelligence was doing in our work. And we've put some of those links for you. But one of the big differentiations that folks have been talking about is, are you using AI as an assistant or as an agent? You might use both. And in our teaching, I think I might argue we would use it both ways, but we need to be clear on when we're asking for assistance and when we're actually asking for an agent to do something. So when we look at what that looks like, an assistant is what you think it is. How can I help you? And then waits for you to give instructions. So whether you're using ChatGPT or any of the other places out there that are supporting intelligence, often you'll see when you're shopping, online shopping, you'll see this little chat box comes up. And in AI language, it's referred to as a chat box. So you would go into GPT as your chat box and say, hey, I'd like assistance making a rubric, or I'd like assistance on something else. And we'll talk about some of those different things. Or you may use that same adaptive technology to now take on a role and an initiative for you. Like, I would like you to find ways that folks are differentiating it in the classroom for fractions. So they may take on a role of looking at differentiation. They may take a role on creating some outcomes for you with an English as an additional language student. You may have all kinds of different pieces that you may want to go with. And I'm working hard to use some of our acronyms, but when we start to put together some of our reporting methods for some of our students who need some extra supports, we may have the chat box go and say, well, how have people supported this part of literacy before? Or how have people, to give us ideas then that they're taking initiative to find, and then we use in our work. Now that's only going to be as good as our prompting and as good as we can ask those questions. I remember when Power School first came on board and we were using it to create timetabling. I mean, that's a form of AI. And our timetables in the beginning were absolutely devastatingly terrible. And it wasn't until we started to learn how to ask the right questions, put in the right parameters, did we get any kind of support that would lead to graduation or completion or students being able to take the courses that they needed. Cheryl, I'd love to pull you into the conversation here. What is your experience with creating some prompting? And what are some of the things that you're thinking about would help us to know when we're creating those prompts?
Yeah, it's definitely something we're still working on, but I did learn something from Angela Stockman's work. Now, she is brilliant, and I would recommend any of her resources, particularly around multimodal thinking, and she definitely gets people writing. She has shared this resource that's based on it reminds me of like understanding by design and thinking about that performance task design where you consider a role, the audience, the format, and the social context of the conditions you're trying to create in a performance task. But Angela Stockman has adapted that notion of crafts as an acronym to really help us make precise instructions that help guide AI to produce the types of outputs that we can really benefit from. For example, helping to take two grade levels of curriculum and find overlapping, pull out themes and content within the cusps that we can link together. That's a great thing for an assistant to help with, right? I think it's important how she talks a little bit about the role. If you are an experienced teacher, then you can trim through some of the feedback where it tells you to hand out the papers and say hello to your students, but thinking more about what do we do with that output afterwards, and how do we use our knowledge and our understanding of the art of our practice to really create something not just to download and deliver, but to give us a starting point, to give us a little boost, a leg up on the design of learning that is really responsive to the children and the students in our care.
Again, I just love how you're bringing it back to who we are as professionals and just seeding it there, because I think that's where the conversation needs to stay, and we need to keep that as our foundational piece. Such a good reminder about after we've done the task, now what? Now how are we bringing that back
Yeah.
into our assessment and into our learning? One of the things that we are going to chat a little bit more in depth is some of the areas where so far AI shines. And again, this is not a complete list, nor is this a whole evidence-based piece. This is our perspective, and certainly mine on some of the top things that I'm starting to use when I'm working with teachers, when I'm working with students in classrooms. And we're looking at some of the planning pieces. One of the top pieces are the gathering ideas of how to set appropriate learning goals. One of the things that is so exciting about being able to have AI is you have at your fingertips all of the different leveling tools that you need. And so when you think about, well, as a teacher, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing as a cognitive foundational piece. I'm seeing that my student has some visual pieces where they're skipping around the page. They're not able to do some of that focus work. How might I create some activities for a student to focus and to have some of that replication? Asking my AI tool for activities that help with focusing, help with spatial relationships, help with some of those cognitive foundational pieces. Again, as you look at the list, you might go, oh yeah, oh right. But in that moment when you're planning, we can overthink and we can forget things. Whereas AI as a thought partner is just there. And that's the second piece, right? Around getting stuck, supporting our correspondence. I don't know how many of you get stuck with your emails. You come and you're like, oh no, I have another 100 from the last hour. True story. Now what am I going to do, right? I could not write without Grammarly anymore, I don't think. I said it do set professional tone. I have some certain words or things that I'd like, and I can move through my emails much quicker, much more efficiently, and kinder. I give better responses because of some of the AI tools that I'm using, and we have a lot of correspondence. I can also set it to provide student feedback. And so all of a sudden, this note that I've made can completely be redesigned to be more friendly or more whatever it is that I'm looking for. We can use that in our work. We can look at it from task ideas and also for assessment. If what am I going to be looking for? How do I want to set up my rubrics? These are all sort of some fun ways that we can start to think about using our teaching assistant. And then again, they come back to us to use our professional discretion. This is,
Natalie, can I just jump in for a second about
please.
the scaffolding? I just want to make a link back to our first session where we talked about the readiness stairs, and that, how do we go backwards to help kids and students start thinking about what they need to understand and what are those steps to get toward the target. And you're right, AI is a great thought partner to help us think about those progressions and help us to use that as a tool. So I'm so glad that that part's in there, and wanted to make that link back to the other areas we talked about.
And thank you for doing that because it's important. Learning progressions is something that folks are working through. And absolutely AI is a support for that. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yes. Now here's the slide of all the things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably not all of the things, but what Cheryl and I wanted to highlight for you is some of the ways that people are using AI. So you'll see Quizlet, Q, this booklet. These are to help with formative assessment. They're assessment tools that folks are using. Hello, I'm Smarty is designed as an educational assistant by a university professor. The information is not given back to ChatGPT, which I like from a fiducial police, but it's tied into education. So you can go there and have rubrics, have inclusive learning supports, have all kind task design, unit plans by putting in Alberta Ed curriculum, and it'll source Alberta Ed pieces and learning outcomes. You can say how many grades you want to put together. We're finding that to be really helpful. Of course, Grammarly, ChatGPT, it's changing. The free version is starting to be less and less helpful. And so there is a subscription that's needed. Eduate is similar. It's free right now. However, it's starting to move some of the top pieces to a subscription. Magic School, same. Notebook is still free from Google, and it is a great research tool for you. If you've got some content that you're kind of working through and you're thinking about how can I share it at different levels, Notebook was created to be a research assistant, and so it takes you input the information that you're looking to synthesize, and it will help you do that. So if you're wanting to make some connections or bring some things together, perhaps as you're teaching them or thinking about them differently, this might be a tool that you consider. Cheryl, is there anything you want to add?
No, those are, you summed it up beautifully. Thanks for talking through some of those.
So we want to talk about, okay, so if we want to have an assistant or perhaps an agent at times help us, what are we really wanting help with? Well, it's student engagement, right? That's intellectual engagement that leads to the achievement and leads to a student being able to lean into their learning. And in a multi-age classroom, one of the key pieces that we're going to talk about today, because we got to focus on something, we can't talk about it all, is we wanted to lean into differentiating AI for instruction. Some of you may be very familiar with John Spencer and his work. We've put a link into that extending piece for you to look through his extensive website on the topic. But from him and some conversations that we've had the privilege of having with Dr. Sharon Friesen, we wanted to share, how do we make differentiation a reality in our multi-age classroom? What does that look like? One is creating leveled reading resources, being able to, whether you have ChatGPT or one of the other AI places source that material for you. Or if you have something that you want students to attend to, you can upload your materials and say, okay, show me what it would look like at a grade 2 reader, grade 5 reader, grade 7 reader. And so you can have all these differentiated materials automatically at your fingertips for your students. And we just
So
felt like,
essential in a multi-age classroom, right? Like that is the tool. How many hours have we spent doing that on our own in classes over the years, right?
or
Hmm.
investing in really expensive leveled readers.
Hmm. Yeah. I like this one too, breaking down a task, coming back to scaffolding it. What are the steps? How can we bring this into smaller chunks? I think about a guide to success or some, not everyone needs the same level of scaffolding. And so this is a way that we can really leverage an assistant, to help us with the important work that we decide needs to happen as professionals.
Absolutely. And again, just sort of building on that conceptual understanding, using AI as a tutor. Dr. Sharon Friesen shared a really interesting case study that's coming out of Japan that other countries are starting to lean into and wonder how they can scaffold for their area. In this school system in Japan, there was through student surveys and data, they recognized that students were feeling as if they didn't get as much one-on-one coaching and tutoring from their teachers as they had in the past. As class sizes have gotten larger and some of the tasks have become more complex, the teacher is attending to what they can attend to, but sometimes are falling short of meeting kids exactly in the place where they need feedback at the exact time. And we all know that from being in the classroom. Sometimes we hit it, and sometimes we know we leave it going, shoot, I didn't get back to, or I didn't see.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've employed this, they've taken on and made their own version of a chat GPT, and they've used it as a chat box style. So the student is conversing with AI back and forth in a conversational tone. They can either speak or they can type, depending, or do both. And so as they come up to a challenge in their work, they can ask for assistance. Now, one of the things, as Dr. Sharon was talking to me about the scenario, my first thought was, well, what happens to productive struggle? And she said they attend to that. So the chat box is leveled to far prompt to close prompt. And so when a student asks a question, they will go to the farthest area of coaching and will, as questions keep coming in, they will slowly move closer. However, they will never actually give an answer unless unless the teacher triggers it for them, because it'll come up as a bing and she'll say, okay, the student has asked, I believe it was 10 different ways, something along there. But there was room for agency. And I think the exciting thing that I heard as Dr. Sharon Friesen interviewed these students said they have never felt more supported. They get the information from where they can. They appreciate that their teacher is there helping, but they really feel like they are getting one-on-one support from their bot, and student achievement is on the rise. Students, and so that's just something for us to think about in terms of that assistant or that agent. Is that a place that we're interested in looking at to support student achievement?
It makes me think about how we, sometimes it's, if it's just recall of knowledge or, something that they need in order to take the next step, that those little hints and coaching tools could help along the way. So yeah, it's nice to know that some of the tools that we have shared can be practical in supporting the learning of for students as they go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also makes me, the fact that you can create images, that there's increasingly more tools with speech recognition that hopefully lots of you have access to. We've seen it help a lot with group scheduling. You'd mentioned some timetabling before. Definitely, we've seen that targeted practice when you identify a skill or an area that is a stretch for students and they need a little bit of practice. You can also think about mm, scaffolding and changing the amount of practice or the number of questions that are appropriate for a certain student. We've talked about modeling or modifying assignments, and yeah, it's really, I think, the notion of that we're using AI as a support for our workload for things that use our time, but not taking away from the intellectual rigor of being a professional and with sound pedagogy in classroom practice.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where this last part takes us. One of the things that we know from the folks that we support in Alberta classrooms, we have more and more students that are coming where English is an additional language for them. And we don't always have supports in place in our schools and in our classrooms to support students who maybe know all of the content area, but just not in the language that it's being presented. And so what could AI look like for these students when I'm still thinking in my home language, but I'm being asked to put everything into English? It we know from research and from practice that if I can access and talk a little bit and think a little bit in the language that I'm used to presenting in, I'm going to learn language. I'm going to learn English so much quicker. I'm going to be more proficient. I'm going to be able to be more precise in my language. So I love it here as a translation tool. We've already talked about some of the leveling parts. One of the things that Cheryl and I talked about is with ELAL learners, we are front loading our vocabulary. And so how can we use this as a tool to support that piece? And then we were just talking about coaching. How could we use this as a place to practice English? We know that, you know, we have some schools have dogs, some schools use a teddy bear, use some low stakes place for kids to be able to read and to practice their language. After COVID, where we don't bring as many of those things in to the classroom anymore. So maybe being able to speak to my computer would be a great low stakes way to practice my English with someone who can give me some support and some tutoring, but I don't worry about being embarrassed in front of my computer.
Right. Yeah. No, I hope that, with all of these ideas, we've not only given you a few ideas for how you can implement it, but really keeping in the focus the ways that an assistant and an aide can really, support you in that work. Thanks for bringing all these great resources and ideas to the table today, Adelie. Great to learn and grow with you.
Thanks for being here and talking it out with me. It's good to think together. Take care, everybody.